Welcome to this explainer of a ScienceBuzzer exclusive video article. Today, we're unpacking the incredible biological realities of what happens to the human body after spending months in space. Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to put yourself in the boots of an astronaut for a second. You've left Earth far, far behind. Imagine you've just spent exactly 241 days floating effortlessly in the vacuum of space. I mean, for nearly 8 entire months, just like NASA astronaut Chris Williams and his Roscosmos crewmates did aboard the International Space Station. You haven't walked a single step, you haven't climbed a single flight of stairs, you haven't even felt the weight of your own body. Every single movement has been completely effortless. A gentle push of your finger sends you gliding gracefully across your orbital home. You drink coffee out of floating tiny bubbles. Even falling asleep feels entirely different because your brain registers absolutely no sense of up or down. You are living in a state of absolute weightless freedom. But then, the mission ends. Your spacecraft pierces through the atmosphere, the parachutes deploy, and you land safely back on Earth. The recovery crew approaches. That heavy metal hatch cracks open, and fresh, crisp Earth air rushes into the cabin for the first time in 241 days. You've been dreaming of this moment, right? Of finally coming home. But as you try to move, you're hit with a shocking, brutal reality. Your own body suddenly feels unbelievably heavy. It's a crushing, almost suffocating weight. You're pinned down by an invisible force you had completely forgotten about. To understand why this happens, we really have to look at how different life is on the ground versus up in orbit. See, gravity isn't just something that holds our feet to the floor. It's like a silent partner. It's a constant, invisible workout that quietly shapes every single aspect of our biology. Without you even realizing it, every step you take on Earth is an exercise routine. Just standing perfectly still, that's a workout. Your leg muscles, your spine, your heart, and your bones are constantly fighting and working against Earth's gravitational pull. In space, though, that effortless movement means zero gravitational demands are being placed on your biology. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the definition of microgravity itself. A lot of people think there's just no gravity in space, but the International Space Station is actually still under the heavy influence of Earth's gravity. The reason astronauts float is because the station is continuously falling around our planet at a tremendous, blistering speed. Because the station, the astronauts, and everything inside are all falling together at the exact same rate, it creates this condition of weightlessness, or microgravity. At first, this feels amazing, but the human body is incredibly efficient. It quickly realizes that gravity is no longer making demands on it, and so a fascinating biological betrayal begins. This brings us to a question we hear a lot when people watch recovery footage of perfectly healthy, elite space explorers having to be physically carried out of their spacecraft and placed into chairs. If they're fit enough to survive space, why can't they just stand up? Well, as this quote directly from the ScienceBuzzer article explains, their muscles have forgotten what it feels like to support their own weight. Without gravity pulling downward, the heavily relied upon muscles in the legs, the hips, and the back are doing a fraction of their normal work. Over the weeks and months, they simply atrophy. They become smaller, and they become significantly weaker. Of course, NASA and other space agencies know exactly what happens to muscles in microgravity. They totally anticipate this severe muscle loss, which is why the International Space Station is basically equipped with a high-tech gym. To fight back against the lack of gravity, astronauts are required to use specially designed treadmills, stationary bicycles, and advanced resistance machines. They literally strap themselves down with bungee cords and harnesses just to create artificial resistance so they can maintain some semblance of their earthbound strength. But consider this number. 2. That represents the 2 grueling hours of intense physical exercise that every single astronaut must complete every single day while on the ISS. But here's the hard truth of spaceflight. Even with 2 hours of intense daily exercise, muscle loss can only be reduced. It can never be completely eliminated. The moment these astronauts return to Earth, gravity immediately demands full, 100% performance from muscles that have essentially been on a weightless vacation for months. So the crucial point is that muscle weakness is actually only half the battle. The second major biological failure upon landing happens right inside the head. Deep inside your ear is a remarkable hidden structure called the vestibular system. It's filled with tiny fluid chambers and microscopic sensory cells, and it acts as your body's natural balance detector. Every time you turn your head, bend over, or simply stand up, this intricate system tells your brain exactly how your body is oriented. And on Earth, gravity is what makes these sensors work with such extraordinary precision. Up in space, however, gravity is no longer pulling on the fluid in those inner ear chambers. The whole reference point is just gone. The brain, being an absolute master of adaptation, beautifully and seamlessly adapts to space by relying much more heavily on visual cues rather than the vestibular system. If you see the floor below you, your brain says, okay, that's down. This space adaptation is perfect for life in orbit, but it creates a massive, debilitating processing problem the exact second Earth's gravity returns. Upon returning to Earth, the vestibular system suddenly wakes up and floods the brain with intense gravity signals that the brain hasn't had to process for 241 days. The immediate result of this sensory overload is harsh. When this massive flood of long unused vestibular information hits the brain, astronauts experience a very specific set of symptoms. They suffer from intense dizziness and poor balance. They face severe motion sickness. They have immense difficulty simply walking in a straight line. And many report a bizarre, highly disorienting sensation that the solid ground beneath their feet is literally moving or tilting. Their brain is just completely overwhelmed trying to untangle that sudden rush of gravity-based data. But don't worry, the human brain is remarkably resilient. As the article notes, it is almost like learning to ride a bicycle again after many years. Sure, it's confusing and super wobbly at first, but the neuroplasticity of the brain kicks right in. The mind quickly relearns how to read those signals from the inner ear, and usually, most astronauts will regain their normal sense of balance within a matter of days or weeks. This brings us to a major misconception. Hollywood movies love to show a myth where astronauts step out of their capsule looking totally heroic, waving broadly to the cheering crowds, and just walking off to a celebratory dinner. Nope. The reality is a grueling, multi-step rehabilitation process. Step 1 begins within hours of landing with immediate, intensive medical exams to measure muscle strength, heart function, and nervous system performance. Step 2 involves guided walking exercises and specialized balance training to retrain that vestibular system. And Step 3 requires intensive strength building and cardiovascular workouts just to get their bodies back to a baseline Earth normal. Looking at the recovery timeline, it becomes super clear just how drawn out this process really is. While medical exams begin within mere hours, it actually takes weeks to truly regain normal unconscious balance, and it can take months after landing to achieve complete physical recovery. The most important rule of thumb here is proportional. The longer the space mission is, the longer it takes for the human body to feel completely normal and strong again. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why scientists study every single returning astronaut with such intense focus. They aren't just explorers, they are invaluable scientific volunteers. We have to look at the big picture here. Future astronauts aren't just going to orbit Earth, they're going to spend 2 to 3 years on deep space missions to Mars. Unlike today's ISS crews, a Mars crew won't be able to just hop in a capsule and return home in a few hours if a medical emergency happens. Understanding the recovery of astronauts today is absolutely the only way we can prepare humans to survive years in deep space tomorrow. This is the core ScienceBuzzer insight from the article. The human body is incredibly adaptable, but every adaptation comes with a price. Living without gravity teaches us profound lessons about humanity's biological limits. Gravity shapes our heartbeat, our bones, our muscles, and our movement. We simply must understand these deep structural changes and their biological prices before we can safely build permanent homes on the moon or send our people to live on the surface of Mars. Which leaves us with one final, fascinating cliffhanger drawn directly from the article's conclusion. We know astronauts work out constantly, and we know they still suffer physical decline. So the ultimate question remains, why do astronauts lose muscle and bone in space, even when they exercise for 2 hours every single day? What is the deep structural influence that gravity exerts on our cellular biology that exercise alone simply cannot replace? That's a mystery that continues to drive the future of space medicine. Thank you for joining me for this